Okay, so so what are the top 12 React interview questions? Okay, now if you are preparing for React interviews right now in 2024, you will know that you will get around 10-12 questions on React. Okay, both which will say, test your logical, both the concept as well your practical implications. So practically, if you have done, how good you are, how qualified you are, will be tested. Your React skill will be tested based on these questions. Okay, so first of all, like I've set my screen over here. First, it's hooks, right? Always hooks will be asked first. Okay, and in these, all the hooks I'll be writing in order. So let me write here. So in use state, what kind of questions they might ask? Okay, let me write here. So we all know that use state is okay. We all know that use state is used for what? Use state has the state variables. It has the state variable. It returns an array which we destructure it. The first value is the initial state, and the second value is a function which can change the state. As simple as that. So they might ask you, first of all, what is the syntax of use state? That is one. Second, they will ask you how to update the state. Okay. Using the second function, that is the state. How to update the state is using the set function, right? You can name it anything, but it is a set function, for example. Okay, now is use state synchronous or asynchronous? It's asynchronous. Okay, it's not synchronous. That means if you update the state, it will not get updated immediately, right? So based on this asynchronous concept, what they will ask you, so let me write here first state, then they will ask async. It's async. Based on the async part, what they can ask, how to update the state immediately. Now if you want to update the state, you have to use the previous state value and then you have to update the state. That is one thing. Second is you have to use, if you are updating the object, then you have to use a spread operator and update the object. And third is, if you are using an array, that also you can do spread operator, or you can use directly. Four different ways are there, right? So for async, you have to use something called, for example, I'm having set so okay, so okay, maybe set, okay, let it be set. So then what I'll do is I have to just use something similar to this. Is to write here the previous state, and then we have to do it in this format, right? If it's an object, you have to write in an object for curly braces. If it's an array, you have to write in brackets, and you have to write three dots, that is spread operator, and you use the previous state, that is the here you write like this. And then what you want to update, you want to update the id, then you can update the id as id, or maybe name, or whatever variable you want to update. Or if you have a variable above, and you can just use the variable name, right? This is immediately if you want to update the state, right? So I'll just write for immediate updating the state. Okay, this is the, if it is the question, let me write here tab dot, I just write uh, how to update the state immediately. Update the state immediately. Okay, the answer is this. I'm just writing the answer also. Okay, this is one question. Then they will ask how to update only selected values of a state variable which has a form, as a form object, for example. Okay, so how to, so a form will have different values, right? It can have a name, age, password, and all those things are there, right? So now if I want to update only the name, then how I have to update? I don't want to update any other thing. So in that case, the answer will be set update form. If it is there, then what I will do is I just write here the original state and then the new state, right? So I'll just write in this format. I'll just write here dot 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 the update form variable. Okay, then what I'll do, so that means I'm having a copy of the original value, and then I've just used to, suppose I'm having the name object to be changed, right? In this format you can change, right? This is what you will do. Okay, and then related to use state, whatever related to use states async, what are the different questions they can ask you? That is what I'm saying. How to update only selected values of a state variable which has a form of it, that is one thing. Then how to conditionally update state. How to update state conditionally? You can't use a hook conditionally, so you can't write it conditionally. So how to update it? So first, what you have to do, you have to create the object and then update the objects, then update the state. Okay, update the state after updating the value, uh, updating the state value, state variable. Okay, conditionally. Okay. I can remember only these three things, and directly how can you directly update state? So this is the straightforward question. So you will just write set data, for example. Then you can write true or false or whatever directly. Okay, and then one question in state they can ask is how to initialize a state. Okay, how to initialize a state? Simple. You have to use state, and you have to use an array or an object or value, boolean value, anything, true, false, whatever. Okay, anything, right? Now you can use a callback also. In this format you can directly use, or you can use a callback to update the state. That also you can, it is possible. So in that case it will not update immediately. So like what we are doing over here, right? Here the same thing only we will be doing over here. So we can update using the callback also, you can update. Okay, so this manner also you can initialize the state, right? So that is the possible for six courses in state and async only using use state. What else will be there in use state? Oh, I think yeah, that much only, not much. Okay, there is use effect. So what is use effect? So use effect, what it will do? So it will render the state every time. Now how to render these? So it will render the component every time anything changes. Anything changes means what can changes. So when the component renders, component re-renders whenever a state changes or props changes or the parent component changes, then the child component will also re-render. Okay. Now if you use effector, it will re-render the component every time. Okay. But when you use a parenthesis, it will be updating only once as a dependency if you pass, right? So first of all, what are the possible questions you can ask? We are discussing questions, right? So how, when does a component re-render, right? When does a component re-render? The answer is when state changes, state or props or parent component is rendered. Okay. So when state or prop change and props changes, when state variable changes, and with not only state variable, with Redux also, if you are using Redux variable, it will change then also. If state changes, if prop changes, if parent component is rendered, then when does a component re-renders? These three cases component will re-render. Okay, and how to stop re-rendering of a component every time the above changes. Okay, and there can be many answers, but using use effect can be one of the answer. Use effect is there, use ref is also there, right? And obviously you can do it through use memo also, not use memo, yeah, use memo also you can do, react memo also you can use, use callback. There is there is a solution for everything. Use callback also you can use. What else you can use? You can divide, create smaller components, that also can be done, but that will not solve the whole problem. But you have to create smaller components as well as you have to use one of these, right? Okay, that is so. Since we are studying use effect, using use effect, how we will do it, right? So using use effect, how we will do it, how to show the re-rendering is using the dependency. Okay, using use effect, how to stop rendering the component, okay, is you have to use effect, then to it pass a callback, okay, and then use a dependency. Now when there is a dependency parameter, here it will, this will have to render only once, okay. So only during initial rendering, that means when the page load, there is initial rendering, during initial rendering this will render. It will not render every time the state change. That means any function call you will write inside this, that will get called only the first time, right? So if you want to call any method for the only first time, not every time, then you use effect and then call that function over here, right? So only when the page enters initially rendering only it will call, every time it will not call, okay. That the use of use effect. Now regarding this parenthesis, there can be n number of questions they can ask. Now they will say that, okay, I want to, okay, with using dependency parameter, we can render only once, right? Now if I want to render for a particular state value, if that particular state value only that state changes, state value changes, then only I render. Then what will do? Then in the dependency you have to pass that prop value or state value, you have to pass, right? Okay, so what will be the question? The question will be, how to re-render. Okay, before that, how many use effect can be used? Can be used per component, can be anything, okay. There is no limit. Many, the answer is many, okay. For one shade variable you can have a use effect, but the problem is if you use much more use effect, then there will be a lot of different confusion with this. So in that case, what you have to do, you have to create smaller components. The design has to be changed. You have to create smaller component and pass as props. That is the solution. But how many, what is the answer to this question is many, any number of use effect you can use, okay. So the question is, how to re-render the component only if a selected state variables or props changes, not on every change. So what the question is, only if a particular state variable or particular props change, then only you re-render, not for other state variables. So if there are 10 state variables or props, I don't want to re-render the component for all this, only for a particular if it changes, then how will do it? And the answer will be something similar to this. So what you will do, you use effect, okay, and you have to pass a callback, and the dependency you have to have the state variable here. For example, state variable is so, or the props is maybe id, right? So only when this so changes or the id changes, then only the function that you are calling inside the use effect, that will be rendered, okay? That is one of the question. Okay, so these are 5-6 different kind of questions related to use effect. So use state is over, use effect is over, okay. Next is what? Use context, okay. I don't remember much of use context. I'll update when but use context can be, I don't remember right now, but use context has 2-3 different questions are there. I just update it whenever I have it, okay. Next is use reducer. So use reducer is important because use reducer behaves as a state variable, so it behaves as a redux, right? So in use reducer, what are the different questions they can ask is, so it behaves like a redux, right? So how can you update the state based on action, based on reducer, based on state, what is the initial state? So basically instead of so the one of the question they can ask is, I just note it down, is how to prevent use of multiple state variable, how to prevent use of multiple state variables. So if you want to, if you are having multiple state variables and every time a state variable update, the components will get rendered, right? Now someone is preventing the render, someone is using the render, then you have use effect. There are so many things that is happening simultaneously. In that case, the component will fail, okay, nothing will work. So in that case, what you do, you have to use reducer to have all the variables inside the state. you create one state object inside and you use reducer, and you'll have a reducer created. Reducer function will be there. That reducer function will control that state variable. Okay, and all the variables will put inside the state. There will be initial state and there will be change state whenever any change is happening. That means you have to dispatch an action. That action will be held by the reducer. The reducer has the initial state and it will change the state, and according to it the state of the component will change. Okay, that's a easier solution I can tell you. Okay, this is the only question that I remember right now, using use reducer. Then is use reference. Okay, so use reference, what will do generally, it is used for refer to, so basically it is used for referring to DOM manipulation. So now if you want to do DOM manipulation, don't do it in use effect, do using use reference. So it creates a reference variable, reference to that particular DOM element, and whenever the value inside the, suppose you are having an input text box, right? Input text box, you are entering some value. So what I'm saying is that whenever you are entering some value, I want to change some class or some things would happen. And in that case, what I'll do, I can obviously have an event handler attached to it, on change or on click something I can do, that I can do. But sometimes what happens, if it is not working, that means with use state, what happens is that with the rendering, why use state is used, why use effect or why use state is used, because it will held the state or the value will not change during rendering of the component. Means after the component renders also the value remains the same, so you are using use. But the problem will be in use reference. What is the benefit is that whenever you are rendering, every time it is I mean, there are so many benefits I don't remember right now over use effect, but that is one question, why use reference is better to use from use effect or use state in certain conditions. That questions I can write it over here, but in that state mostly DOM use reference will be used. So we'll create a reference to the input and then take the value and then update the value or whatever you want to do with that state. Okay, and then how to not execute a piece of code initially. So use effect will work at least once, right? Even if you give the dependency, it will render at least once. So initially you don't want to call a function, but later if you want to call a function, then you can use user reference. Two situations are there, you can use user reference, and that will be during DOM manipulation or DOM manipulation, and second is how to prevent initial rendering, prevent function execution in use effect in initial render. Okay, you can Google it out, how to prevent this. The answer will be using use reference. Okay, and obviously DOM manipulation also you can do is using use reference. And there is one more question is how is use ref better than use effect? Okay, you can search this question. Okay, this is also very good question. How is use reference better than use effect? Okay, now use context, use reducer, use reference over. Okay, sixth is use callback. So this use callback is used when it is used. So first of all the direct question can be when use callback will be used. Use callback will be used if you want to memorize a function which gets rendered or called every time, right? Suppose there is a dummy function, okay, and that function will get called every time the component is rendered, right? So we don't want to call that same function. Suppose that function has a API call. I don't want to do API call every time, right? In that case, what I'll do? I'll put that function inside the use callback. When I put that function in use callback, it will see that has a prop or a parameter that is needed for the function. Has it changed? If it has not changed, if it is a then we don't need to call the function, right? So it will prevent the call to the function. Okay, if it is changed, then only it will allow. If it is not changed, it is not allowed, right? So what are the possible questions we can have using use callback? Okay, so how to prevent function call every time the component is re-rendered? Okay, so that answer is using callback, use callback. Okay, that is one thing which I can remember right now. I'll update whenever I remember some other question if I face, because these questions this situation I face while doing work in office, so I remember these situations. Use callback is there, and then what is that? React memo, right? React memo or use memo, same thing only. React memo. React memo, what it will do? It is memorize the component. It means if you are if the parent component changes, right? If the parent component something changes, the props changes in parent component, so the child component also gets re-rendered, right? Now we don't want the component to get re-rendered. If you see, if there are 30 components, child inside child inside child, then you don't want to re-render every component, right? You don't want to do that. To prevent that, what we'll do, we'll memorize the component. It means uh, if there is not important, if the props has not changed, only the parent component is rendered, don't render the child component. Then you have to use react memo and encompass the component inside that. Okay, so what is the question? uh, so question will be how to prevent re-rendering of the child component every time the parent component is rendered. Okay, this is the question. And last would be the use memo. I don't remember, but use memo and use react memo, the react.memo, it does the kind of same role only, so not that much different, but use memo also does the same thing. Okay, so these are the different questions that can be asked in hooks, only hooks. So we have not discussed, so 12 react interview questions, this is the only first react interview questions, right? In hooks, so hooks is the first topic, there are 11 more topics. Okay, this video is getting a little longer, so you go through these questions, do a Google search, do a YouTube search, do read some articles and note it down. Okay, these are must questions. In any face-to-face interview or any written round, machine coding round, they will be asking this. Okay, use state and use effect covers 50%, and rest edge case scenarios you will be using use context reducer, reference, callback, and memo and react memo and use memo. Okay, these 8 hooks questions, these 8 hooks will cover around 20% of your questions, that they will, more than 20%, 30 to 40% of your questions that they will ask in your data. Okay, in the next video we'll be covering one more react topic where the expert question will be discussing. Okay, if you like this video, and let's move to the next video.